It's 5 a.m. at the Rummelsburg train depot in Berlin, Germany, and driver Dieter Kovnatka is boarding his train to begin his early morning shift. Dieter is on his way to collect passengers from Berlin Gesundbrunnen station, where he'll begin a 160-kilometer journey to Leipzig. If he were driving a conventional train, the journey would likely take over 2 hours. But this is one of the new ICET high-speed trains, which has slashed the journey time by 50 minutes to 1 hour and 26 minutes.
It's a nice job and it's also fun. It's definitely a thrilling feeling to be driving 10,000 horsepower.
10,000 PS oder auch manchmal mehr.
The German high-speed network now has over 200 high-speed trains, whizzing around on over 6,000 kilometers of track, with over 1,000 kilometers built in the last 10 years. There are 5 types of ICE train, and the largest has up to 16 carriages, capable of carrying 916 passengers at the speed of a Formula One racing car. Creating these monsters has meant completely rethinking the design of many key components. And one of the first problems the designers had to tackle was how to make them light enough. Conventional trains are made from steel, which is way too heavy for a high-speed design. For a start, a steel train would take ages to get up to speed. Then, once going flat out, its momentum would make it almost impossible to stop and cause it to derail when going around corners. To find out how they solved these problems, we've come to the Siemens train factory in Krefeld-Uerdingen. This is where they build the enormous metal carriages of the latest high-speed trains. As they move through the production process, these carriages are transported from one workshop to the next using a giant remote-controlled cargo transporter operated by Mehmet Ellis.
When I was a child, I never had a remote-controlled car, so driving this is really good fun.
But in fact, these huge carriages aren't as heavy as they look. That's because instead of being made from steel, they're made from aluminium, the same material used to build aircraft. The result? These new lightweight carriages weigh just 50 tons, 30% less than if they were built from steel. But using aluminium brings its own problems. Because whilst it melts at the relatively low temperature of 660 degrees Celsius, it conducts heat far more efficiently than steel. That means you need one almighty arc welder to join the stuff together. Using 10,000 watts of electric current, this giant arc welding machine generates a heat of around 3,000 degrees Celsius, fusing the metal sheets. It can even give the workers sunburn. So when manual welders like Valentin Wagner make the finishing touches, they have to make sure they're well protected.
The cream is essential to protect me from harmful rays.
The next challenge for the designers was how to power the train. The problem is the conventional system of putting the engine at the front is extremely inefficient. Because the only powered wheels touching the tracks are at the front, it's slow to accelerate and struggles to climb hills. What's more, with the engine taking up the whole of the front carriage, space that could be used for passengers is wasted. So the engineers came up with an ingenious solution. For the ICE3, instead of one massive locomotive at the front, they installed 16 smaller electric engines under the floor. Powered by special high-voltage overhead cables, these multiple engines mean that every second carriage has 4 powered axles. As a result, the ICE3 can climb a 1 in 25 gradient without loss of speed, and can even cross borders and change line voltage without stopping. What's more, the unique engine system means there's 20% more free space than in a conventional 8-car train. But having designed a train capable of speeds of up to 330 kilometers an hour, you need some very special rails to run it on. So here in the heart of the Austrian Alps, Wurst Alpine have built one of the largest foundries in the world. The problem with conventional rails is they have lots of joins. So the rails they make here are a staggering 120 meters long. That's longer than a football pitch. Unlike standard tracks, these high-speed rails are then welded together on site to make sure there isn't a bump where the track joins. But the only way the train can hit its top speed of 330 kilometers per hour is to travel in a perfectly straight line. Which is fine when you're going through a flat, empty field, but not so good when there's a huge, great mountain in your way. Then you've only got two options: go around it or go through it. Here in the Thuringian forest, a massive project has begun to do exactly that. This new line will connect Berlin to Munich and will pass through over 80 kilometers of new tunnels. This one, the Blesberg Tunnel, will be one of the longest, running for 8 kilometers beneath the 865-meter-high Blesberg Mountain. They've been tunneling here for more than 12 months and are now over a kilometer into the mountainside. Due to the remoteness of this location, they can't use conventional large-scale tunneling machines. So instead, they're relying on more traditional methods. Lots and lots of high explosive. In charge of causing all the underground damage is Blastmaster Andre Peter Riedling.
This is an emulsion explosive. It's a liquid emulsion. You could say it feels like grease.
The emulsion arrives as two separate components, which only become explosive once they're combined. It's essential the mix is just right, or it could explode whilst being handled. So for safety, Andre combines them at the last minute, using a computerized mixing machine. The highly explosive liquid is then pumped through hoses into holes in the rock face. At the same time, wires are inserted, which will carry an electric charge to detonate the explosion. Once Andre has given the wiring a final check, he sounds an alarm and signals for the face of the tunnel to be evacuated. With a twinkle in his eye, it's time for Andre's favorite part of the job.
I love to blow things up. That's why I'm here.
Darum bin ich auch hier.
It's not rocket science, but it's certainly effective. Using this method, the team tunnel another 8 meters each day and expect to emerge from the other side of the mountain in 10 months' time. But even with all this tunneling work, it's impossible for the rail lines to always be perfectly straight. Some mountains are simply too big to tunnel through, whilst many high-speed trains also need to run on old sections of curved track. So to help them corner at speed, the designers have come up with a groundbreaking feature for the ICET. As the train approaches a bend, mechanized arms lift the outside, tilting the entire train and shifting the weight to the inside of the track. This allows the ICET to travel faster than a conventional train, even when going round corners. But having designed the train to travel at high speed, the engineers found they'd created a major headache for themselves: how to stop it. So here at a special test track, Michael Furhu and Bernd Doll are preparing to test this train's braking system. The trouble with conventional disc brakes is that at high speed they lose performance as they heat up. So the ICE3 is also fitted with special regenerative brakes and a brand new system called linear eddy current brakes.
We assume that all the braking systems are going to work, but to make sure, we're going to our circuit to do a brake test.
Unlike most other brake designs, these brakes don't actually touch anything. Instead, when the brake is activated, electromagnets 1 centimetre above the rail induce eddy currents in the track. These produce a magnetic force, pulling in the opposite direction to the train. And when activated, the train slows to a halt, with no noise or friction. All of which is reassuring news for Dieter, who's now approaching Leipzig.
Delivering passengers to their final destination on time is still enjoyable for me, even after driving for 30 years.
Dieter pulls into the station bang on schedule, and the passengers disembark just 83 minutes after they left Berlin, a journey that just 12 months ago would have taken over 2 hours.